We all have imposter syndrome. We all doubt whether or not our skills, our mindset, our physical capabilities, whatever it is enough to do what we're challenged to do in our business and in our life. But if you decide, I can do this, I'm going to go in this room that I'm afraid to go into and I'm going to enjoy it. Guess what? You're going to go in that room and you're going to enjoy it and you're going to execute. It's simply a confidence thing called party with the beast.
Yep.
The beast is that internal pressure against you that you're afraid to enter the room because there's this beast in that room and it's going to beat you up, and you're just inherently fearful of the beast. But the reality is, what if that beast was your best friend in that room and you were going into that room to party with the beast?
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Franchise. I'm your host, Paul Ehlinger, and today is going to be an awesome show. I was just telling him I actually just read his book on the plane back from the FCXC conference this week. We've got Adam Contos here on the show, former CEO of Remax. Adam, thank you for joining us.
Hey, it's great to see you today, Paul. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. And not that you're not exceedingly well known, but if you can, for anybody who may or may not know about you, give us the quick rundown, on where the heck you've been and how the heck you got to where you are today.
Sure. It's a weird story. So day after I graduated high school, I joined the Marines and did some time in the Marine Reserves, got into law enforcement, so became a cop. I'm a 2-time college dropout because I never really appreciated what you're supposed to be learning in college. I think a lot of entrepreneurs are the same way. So while I was a cop, I started a couple of businesses, and one was an online police supply company. Another one was a security consulting firm, as I was a counterterrorism instructor. Worked a couple of years undercover. That's where I learned sales and called it narc marketing. So, it's about earning trust, meeting people who don't believe in what's going on, getting over their issues and then closing a deal with them. So did that for a couple of years and ran a SWAT team as a SWAT commander. And then I left the law enforcement space and got into working at Remax, the franchisor. So everybody believes Remax is a real estate company. It's a real estate brand is what it is. So us in franchising know there's a brand and there's a franchising company behind that. So so I started working there as I had been consulting in the real estate space, and Remax said, hey, I really want, or the co-founder and CEO both said, we really want you to come work for us because you're already working in our space. So I hopped over. I was a franchise development consultant. So same thing as an FBC, franchise business consultant, in most of the companies. Got into franchise sales, marketing, tech, HR, started picking things up.
All the above, yeah.
Yeah, I went and got my MBA in the process, and which, by the way, I did good the third time.
You didn't drop out of it. It took the third time, yeah.
Third time's a charm. And I made my way into the C-suite, became the CEO. And then about 3 years ago, I left Remax. And the co-founder and I have been building and buying franchise brands since then, as well as consulting in the space. And I'm on the board of directors of the IFA.
That is absolutely awesome. That is a wild career. And I think as I was reading the book, you could tell you learned a lot from those early days. Imagine very high stress situations involved in doing undercover police work, being on SWAT teams. I've personally never done either. But how did those early days kind of affect you when you did become CEO of Remax, right? Like that's what I would consider a very polished, corporate feeling job, but you are like a really real and visceral person just from your background. What did you take from those days to just be more effective at that CEO?
It's interesting that you asked that, Paul. It's kind of funny. Everybody in franchising goes, what did being a cop have to do with being in franchising? And my answer is everything. We get a phone call every day in franchising, and it's people calling you going, my hair's on fire, my business is imploding, whatever it might be. And ultimately what we have to do is we have to really ask the right questions in a calm manner in order to get to the root cause of those situations, and then start deconstructing the situation so that we can create a solution for these people. And then we hold them accountable to that solution as they execute. If they execute on the solution, generally they will end up pulling themselves out of that challenge. If they don't, or they start making excuses or, exercising what the psychology space, Paul's wife is into psychology. So what the psychology space calls external locus of control, which is blaming everybody for your problems, then they're probably not going to make it out of it. But we give them a chance to succeed and we help them get there. And ultimately, we have to understand this from a very, very systematized manner that we can calmly approach and help them work their way through.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense, and I think I imagine you having to do that under very high pressure makes a franchisee problem feel a little less low pressure by the time you get.
Yeah, they're not shooting at me. So it's perfect. The reality is, we get along well with our franchisees, regardless of the brand we have. Sometimes there's Z-Zor challenges, if you
Sure.
will, but ultimately it comes down to we both want the same thing, and that's that
Yeah.
we want them to be profitable and we want them to be successful in growing their brand. And if we all look at that as our final outcome that we're going for, then generally we can get there together.
Yeah, yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And I think another thing that really stuck out to me as I was reading your book, Start with a Win. I don't know if I said the name of the book, by the way, so people can go look it up and find it. But really like turning the negatives into opportunities, right? Like I think as a founder myself, as somebody who's been in kind of multiple businesses building them, there's a lot of negatives. There's more negatives than positives almost sometimes it feels like, right? And I've always kind of held this idea that like you can't be in it for an outcome. You can't be in it to make $1 million. You have to be in it because you love the journey, you love challenging yourself. How did you come to that? I think that's like just a great message to get to.
It's ultimately, again, a psychology approach. But overall, you look at it and go, did I get into this to fail? And the answer is always no.
Yeah.
So if I didn't get into this to fail, then I need to understand that those potential failure points or those stresses on my business model or on my career or what have you are also opportunities to succeed. So if we take a look at it that way, then we will be solutions oriented. We're going to be looking for ways to overcome the challenges that we face every day. And there are a number of challenges in franchising and in small business. I've outlined kind of 10 of them. They're not in my book, but I do talk about them. I'll have them on my website, and I'll create some videos about them here.
We'll put it into the description of the episode as well. We can point them over to people.
Right on. Yeah. But I mean, just a couple of examples. Good employees are hard to find and keep, and they want more money. I mean, everybody complains about that in franchising because it's one of your prime costs. It's the cost of labor and the cost of goods sold are your two key prime costs that you have to deal with. And ultimately, both of those are going to be under pressure and difficult to deal with. Well, guess what? It's always been that way. So we just have to look at it and go, how do I solve for this as I navigate around it in my business? And if you look at it like it's an opportunity, how can I increase my leadership in my business in order to make my people better and help them personally grow? Because people ultimately want that self-gratification, that satisfaction of working in your franchise. And if they're happy working in your franchise, they're not going to be sitting there miserable going, you should be paying me more. Yeah. Now, we have to pay a fair wage, and we have to help them earn more in tips and bonuses and things like that by helping the customer better. But ultimately, that benefits the business. So all those things work together as an opportunity instead of somebody complaining about something going, oh, this is hard, this sucks. Because you're right. It is hard. It does suck.
Yeah, it does.
And we can work with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I love that. And really building on top of that, too, I think an interesting thing you see in the franchising space is everybody has a different emotional state. Like every franchisee is a very different person. They have a very different personality. Right. And one of the big things you talk about is like reframing that fear and self-doubt, and I think some of that helps you solve for those challenges you were just describing. But how did you go about coaching people like that? Because I imagine similar to managing a SWAT team, they're not all the same guy as much as they're trained to kind of act like it. But how did you kind of bring that through to really build franchisees up to have that mentality that you kind of carry?
Well, self-doubt is just inherent in human nature. We're always going to have self-doubt. If you go into a room full of entrepreneurs and you say, who doesn't think they should be in this room? You're going to have most of the hands go up in the room, and those that don't raise their hand are lying about it. Yeah. So the reality is we all have imposter syndrome. We all doubt whether or not our skills, our mindset, our physical capabilities, whatever it is enough to do what we're challenged to do in our business and in our life. But the reality is people have been doing it for thousands, if not millions of years and working their way through it because we are resilient creatures. We will find a way if we put our mind to finding a way. If we decide we're just going to give up and say, I can't do it, then you know what? You're right. But if you decide I can do this, I'm going to go in this room that I'm afraid to go into and I'm going to enjoy it. Guess what? You're going to go in that room and you're going to enjoy it and you're going to execute. It's simply a confidence thing. I have a chapter in my book called Party with the Beast. The beast is that internal pressure against you that you're afraid to enter the room because there's this beast in that room and it's going to beat you up, and you're just inherently fearful of the beast. But
Right.
the reality is, what if that beast was your best friend in that room and you were going into that room to party with the beast?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, we would always look at each other before we went on a SWAT raid because it was super dangerous. And we just look each other in the face. Everybody put their hand in and we say, party with the beast.
I love
And
that.
you go and you party with the beast, and you're not engaged in this self-doubt. You're there to execute.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think people get really caught up on the fact that emotions are transient. And it doesn't mean to not feel the thing. You should feel the fear, you should feel the self-doubt, but you can also watch it go away. Like you can let it leave, and you have to let it happen, right? It has to be a very intentional thing. I think people lose the intentionality of managing their own mindsets.
Totally. And it's interesting, Paul, is when I was selling franchises and running franchise sales departments and things like that, and we were selling at Remax, we would sell 1,000 a year and renew 1,000 a year. So we're talking about a
Those are big
substantial
numbers.
amount. Oh yeah, globally. And even if you break it down to when I just ran a region selling 35 a year and renewing 25 to 30 or whatever it is, I mean, that's still substantial volume when you only have
Yeah.
3 or 4 people doing it.
100%.
But ultimately, we have to take a look at how we overcome things.
Mhm.
And when we understand that we're limiting ourselves in life inherently because we set the bar low, we're going to find the best way to get under that low bar. But if we set the bar high and try and get over it, guess what? Chances are you're at least going to hit the bar, and you're eventually going to get over it, and you're going to go, I never knew I could do that.
Yeah.
Winning is winning. So
Yeah.
why not go after it?
Right. Yeah. Belief is a powerful tool, I would say. You could placebo affect yourself, Absolutely. And jumping topics a little bit. So something we talked about just kind of warming up for the show was AI, and you're obviously diving super deep into that. Remax uses a ton of it. And you also talk a lot about people first leadership. And that's something we obviously started off with the first 10 minutes here. How do you see those two worlds colliding, right? Because I think one of the great fears of AI is like, AI can and will automate away some jobs, So how can you be a people first leader in a world where we're trying to leverage this technology as much and effectively as possible?
Totally. So AI is a real thing, people. If you're ignoring it, then wake up.
Yeah.
It's time to really engage. But ultimately, here's how I look at AI. And this has been said millions of times before. This is not a quote from me. This is a quote from all the AI experts. And that's that AI is not going to replace your job, but somebody who uses AI is going to replace your job.
Yeah.
So I truly believe that. And the same thing happens with leaders. Leadership is in a detriment right now. We've gone through a couple generations where we've failed to execute on growing leaders. You can go back to the Jack Welch, GE generation, call it 20 years ago, whatever, where leadership was a major corporate directive in firms like GE or IBM or something like that. And now we're more of an entrepreneurial environment out there in the workforce. While we still have large brands, they are executing on teaching leadership, but the majority of society is not executing on teaching leadership. So here's what I think. Take AI, take leadership, bang those two things together and figure out how you can improve your leadership with AI. And it might be just asking AI questions or feeding it, go on there and give it a good prompt and say, go out and educate yourself on the top 10 speakers in leadership and tell me who those are. They're probably going to be like Simon Sinek and, Darren Hardy and some other key people that do this, John Maxwell, Tony Robbins, whatever it is. But ultimately, it comes down to getting AI to teach you leadership so you can go talk leadership to your people every single day. So ultimately what that does is it builds culture. It builds a culture of leadership. And it shows that, first of all, you're an AI first company, which everything should be run through AI before it's thought of in a rounded table with just a bunch of humans staring at each other.
100%.
Because it's going to give you some more perspective. But ultimately, you got to use it to make yourself better. And leadership's a great way to do that.
Yeah, I love the way you talk about using it. It's one of my favorite ways. I'll put ChatGPT just on like the talk mode where you can talk back and forth with it. And I'll be trying to think of a solution to a problem. I'm like, hey, give me 5 perspectives I'm not considering to this right now, right? Because I've got my stupid limited scope of what I want to do. And it's been a super effective way just to come at problems more uniquely, right? And to be able to iterate on problem solving fast, right? I love it for that alone.
Totally. And I'll tell you, franchise people, create your own franchise GPT. I've got several of them. I have them for all my franchise brands. I have the FDDs, I have the franchise agreement, I have the Federal Trade Commission regulations, all sorts of different articles in franchising and leadership and things like that dumped into them.
Yep.
And if I get an objection while I'm on a franchise sales call or I learned something at an event, I get a PowerPoint deck, dump it in there, and you'll have a very good franchise consultant to help you and other people in your organization really quickly.
I think the sales objection training is such an interesting use case of it. It's something I've talked about with a lot of people. You'll get franchisees that are fearful of the objection, right? And they don't know how the heck to do it. Have it loaded with all the information, have ChatGPT act like the customer, and have them be a very mean customer. You know what I mean? And have them just type the responses out, because all that is practice. And ChatGPT can absolutely solve that.
100%. And tell it to be a attorney that's reviewing the franchise documents.
It's even
And
better, yeah.
tell me all your objections about this FDD.
Yeah, you'll find out really quick.
Totally.
Yeah, and for anyone out there, you can turn off the data sharing settings in ChatGPT. So don't just go throw your documents around willy nilly, because I know somebody's legal team will be pissed off about that. So watch out for that as well. I love that. And so obviously, I think you're a pretty forward thinker when it comes to this, especially among like the large executive teams. I think we've seen some really large companies lean in. I've personally talked to a few CIOs that, were like, hey, we're moving slow on this. We're thinking about what we want to do. What was your aha moment? Because I think it probably came while you were at Remax, yeah, as you were kind of implementing some stuff there. And I mean, you did several acquisitions in the space as well.
Yeah, we actually got into AI in 2018. So mostly machine learning. So taking a lot of data and making some predictive analytics around that. But ultimately, it was quite effective. It still is quite effective. The reality is we can think in very small manners compared to how this machine learning or AI can think. So you might as well get this broad-based perspective regardless. If you think we're going to move slow, we're not going to break anything. I mean, come on. You move fast and not break anything also if you're pretty calculated in it and you communicate with everybody else. There's clarity, but why not try and break stuff? That's how we find new ideas. You look at the light bulb. How many times did that
1,000 light
not
bulbs
work?
had to have broken. Yeah. How do you? Okay, so I love this question, because I think it's really easy for somebody like me to talk like that, because I've got a smaller company. I don't have thousands of people underneath me. I love hearing people like you talk like that, where how are you able to like effectuate that leadership style at the scale of a place like Remax? Like, because you're telling people, hey, go break things, but you've got a middle manager that's like, if I break something, I'm losing my freaking job, right? So like, how do you effectuate that kind of like thought leadership and effective change in a large organization?
It's based in the fabric of the culture. So you have to build a culture of trust within your organization where employees trust that they are empowered to try things. Just like you hear Nordstrom or the Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton or any of these other major organizations that are known for their high standards in customer experience, they're empowering their employees to take chances. And when an employee takes a chance, you have to be ready for that employee to fail in that chance and encourage the fact that, okay, that didn't work, but what did we learn from it? Because everything is an opportunity to learn. It's not a loss. I mean, sure, okay, it might cost the company a little money or something like that, but if it's done with the right of intentions, and that's built in the culture of the organization, then it's okay. Now, your question is, how do you share that through the organization? The reality is it's got to be something that is visible, and it has to be constant. So that clarity has to be regularly filtered throughout the organization. And I believe organizations should have at least a monthly call from their key leaders, either the president or the CEO or whoever it is, that talks about those particular values in the organization. And then people, they hear it 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They're going to go, I've heard the same thing from this person. I believe
it now.
Exactly. Yes. So, that repetition creates trust. the presence creates trust. I love the word presence creates trust, or that phrase. And my other phrase that I love is top of mind is first in line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when we're top of mind as a leader, we're first in mind when people go, what should I be doing in this circumstance? What would the boss do? And if they've heard you talk about it half a dozen times, they're like, okay, it's good to go. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I think like I said, you guys did a couple acquisitions in AI since 2018. You're obviously way deeper into it now. Like I can just tell you're up to date on everything as we've talked over time here. What is your framework for change? So if you want to like create this new initiative, right? Because there's a lot of brands out there that I think they're just touching AI, right? And they've got that fear around it. If you were to say, hey, here's the XYZ steps you should take as a franchise brand to implement an AI solution, obviously something somewhere, what would you recommend how they go about that?
So I heard at the IFA conference, one of the speakers talked about having an AI strategy.
Mm-hmm.
And that AI strategy should be inclusive of new ideas and formulating new paths for the organization. And by the way, the AI strategy is not run by IT. Okay.
Yeah.
The AI strategy is run by the C-suite, who oversees the progressive nature of the organization. And if you want, of course, the IT department should be part of this. I'm sure IT is just screaming listening to this podcast right now.
I'll get an angry email from like 3 CTOs after this one.
You might. And the CTO should obviously have a seat at the table. But the reality is AI is not plugging in Ethernet cables and making sure your firewall works.
No, it's to effectuate change within a business unit, right?
It's more business strategy and actions and the thought process between those two things than anything else. So why not include those that strategize in the organization and those that actually deliver action to the street in the organization, instead of just handing it to them going, guess what you have to do now? So let's get their buy-in. Let's have people part of this, and maybe even come back and say, okay, Tuesday is AI day. Everybody in the organization has to use AI on Tuesday because I want you to get used to it. You have permission to do this. Here's the boundaries around that. Use this particular model, or let's have a meeting and we'll explain it to everybody, whatever. But I want you to see the benefits of it and understand that there are certain things you can do. Like that book took me like 14 or 16 months to write with somebody
could have been a little
me.
quicker.
Yeah, totally. I wrote that during COVID. And I mean, the reality is it could have been 2 weeks. Yeah. So, there's a lot of time saving that can happen with AI.
Yeah.
There are also some stumbling blocks, but you're not gonna actually get comfortable until you start playing with it.
Yeah, it's wild you bring that up. I literally, after I finished this, I started it on the way down to Atlanta. I finished it on the way back. I had some more time. I started building a business book writer AI because I was like, I think you could structure this, and all you'd have to do, right, is like go collect the 10 case studies you want to talk about, go grab the 10 interviews you did, feed that into it, tell them who you want to talk like do I want to talk like Simon Sinek or whomever, and it would write it for me, right? And you could have it just do it section by section and then pass the context each time so it doesn't lose it the entire way. I genuinely think you could probably do that in a weekend. You could write the software to write the book in a weekend.
Totally. Yeah, I have a good friend who's written like 22 New York Times bestsellers. So wow, I'm not gonna be able to convince her of that, but that is a good question that I'm going to ask her.
Okay, well, I'll run an experiment here. I'll write a book this year and I'll release it, and I won't tell anybody it was written by AI, and then I'll drop the video afterwards. That's the AI writing the book, and we'll see what happens.
Awesome.
I love that. I think something that's really interesting, you guys were in AI in 2018 and you bring it up. I think AI before 2022 was reinforcement learning and deep learning, right? It was true machine learning. I think AI has gotten generative now, and that's kind of been the big interesting shift that's happened. But with that, a lot of the use cases are immaterial. I would call them wrappers over ChatGPT. Where do you see this generative AI becoming more effective over the next 5 years? Is it because it gets plugged into actual workflows? Is it because it becomes more data aware and contextualized? What do you see that playing out over the next few years here?
Well, I mean, we obviously hear the term agentic AI quite a bit right now. Absolutely. Where you're basically creating these little minions of yourself in the AI space to go out and do things for you. And I think that's going to become more prolific. There are a lot of people playing with those. I mean, we're playing with them all the time here. But the reality is it's going to be more mainstream, and people, you'll have a fifth grader doing it here pretty soon. So as soon as that starts happening, I think it's going to change the perspective we have on this. You're going to have, when I was growing up, we had a cartoon called the Jetsons, where it was robots, they did things for you, whatever it was. But I think the robots that do things for you, or what does things for you, is going to be that agentic AI. You'll name it and you'll tell it what to do, and it'll tell you when to order more milk and whatever it might be. I think that's going to become more mainstream. And then ultimately, we're going to adapt our jobs around that. So it's going to be a function of efficiency and effectiveness based on that. And you got to be prepared for this. And this being any conversation you're on, you got to understand that the person on the other end is going to have a reference of agentic AI during that conversation, either in their glasses or on their computer screen if you're on a Zoom or online call, something like that. But ultimately, they're going to have an expert sitting on their shoulder to help them through what they're talking about. So you might want to have one on your shoulder too.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. I think my big hairy goal for Flamel is a single person could run and localize marketing for 1,000 locations just across all of digital content. And that's kind of like my personal challenge, is how do we build that? I think that's exactly what you're going to see. And I love that ideology of, like, if somebody else is going to have the expert on the shoulder, you should probably have yours as well.
Totally. Yeah. And I mean, the reality is, you look at social media marketing, you guys are really good at that. And you take a look at, what do they think about the AI doing this? They're going to have ways of ensuring that they're going to monetize it properly. Everybody tries to keep their algorithm, secret or whatever. Pretty soon there's going to be an algorithm. It's just going to be like testing the speed on your internet. You're just going to go, tell me the algorithm, bink, hit the button, and it'll tell you, you want to say these things if you're selling this stuff. So
100%.
It's going to get more complicated. It's going to become more effective, but ultimately, we have to understand that the purchaser on the other end is a human that's going to be powered by AI as well.
Yep. Yeah. No, 100% agree with that. And I think, getting down to this as well, what do you find the biggest risk to be? Because I think a lot of people put those risks before the action, even though I know you talk a lot about, like, take the action. That's the way to kind of get through things. What's the biggest risk to these franchise brands as they either start doing this, or is the risk that they don't start doing this?
I mean, first of all, yes, I would say the risk is that they don't start doing this, but I also think the risk is that people are too risk averse a lot of times. Yeah. So it's interesting when you sit in a meeting of, in a mastermind or a group in the franchise space, or really any space for that matter, and you hear somebody go, isn't somebody going to steal my data? And I mean, the first thing I'm thinking is, I got news for you.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah. Your FDD is already out there.
Yeah.
There's FTD scrapers pulling all your data. And
it's one of the first things I built was I scraped all the FTDs and put it into a bot so I could chat with it and pick better targets, because you can get marketing budgets. I know exactly where you're trying to grow. I mean, it's like one of the first things we built up.
There you go. Paul's taken all your data, so
it's out on the
there.
Internet,
But anyhow, yeah, I think the risk is doing nothing is a decision. Yeah. And there's a risk to every decision you make. So there's a risk to doing nothing. There's a risk to dragging your feet. There's a risk to ignoring it. There's a risk to not having your priorities straight, or not having priorities in your business. If you take a look at those things, you need to be risk accepting and play the chess game like there's a timer in front of you, like a chess tournament would be. And I'm not a chess player, but I sit there and I watch people move the pieces and then hit the little button. Yeah. That's how AI is functioning right now, folks. And somebody just hit the button. So it's your turn to make the move and then hit the button again. So go out and take a chance, move the chess piece and see what happens. The reality is you're not going to crash your business, especially in franchising, because your risk is diversified amongst all your franchisees.
Yeah, it's very robust.
Exactly. Take some chances, do it for your franchisees, communicate with them and ask them their opinion, because I can tell you they're trying stuff right now. They're entrepreneurial. They're going to go out and break stuff and not tell you. So you might as well be part of it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think it's an interesting business shift opportunity right now, because I think the small brands that figure out how to leverage it more effectively have a generational opportunity to leapfrog business brands that move, or bigger brands that move too slow. And so if you're a big brand, you do have a time clock, right? You do have to compete, because other brands are going to be able to grow faster, more efficiently, and with less team members than what you had to do over the last 10 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're gonna see it in all of our vendors. We already are. You look at Fran Data, Fran Connect, all of these different things. They're using AI. Just take your POS files off your point of sale, dump them all into AI, and say, "Hey, I'm Adam, and I run this sandwich shop, and I want you to tell me where my gaps are."
Yep.
And it'll give you a gap analysis.
100%.
What are all the different business principles I should be looking at in order to analyze my risk and my reward opportunities? And it'll tell you that stuff. Just feed it information and ask it questions, and it will probably save you some time.
Yeah, no, 100%. And for the IT folks that are worrisome out there, you can set up local retrieval augmented generation. So you can do it all on a local server. You don't have to worry about it. So that's definitely the way to go. Love to, at the end, we always do a little, quick hitter section, a little Rorschach quickness response, if you're ready for a few of those.
Sure, go for it.
I've got to ask first, because you just said you came in from golfing. What type of clubs do you play?
Tailor-made.
Okay, beautiful. Leadership trend that you think is overhyped?
Wow, overhyped leadership trend. I would say sitting back and saying, I trust my people to do the right thing. And I say that because you should trust your people, but you should be out there with them, showing them how you do the right thing the right way.
Yeah, lead the charge. One of my favorite questions, what's something you've recently changed your mind about?
Something I've recently changed my mind about, whether or not I'm a good golfer, I guess would be the first one.
It's a cop-out, though. You just had the...
I know I'm not a good golfer. I would say that, as every day goes on, we heard all this, oh my gosh, the economy is going to be tough. Tariffs are going to impact my business adversely, whatever. I keep changing my mind going, let's not rush to a conclusion. Let's be patient in business and transition and transformation and do the best that we can in our business. And we'll see success because we're doing the best that we can instead of focusing on challenges. So,
yeah.
Everybody gets hyper-focused in one thing. We sit on a panel at IFA or a meeting, and you got to change your mind. You got to stop looking at this like, oh my gosh, the world's on fire, and go, hey, here's how I'm going to go grow my business.
Yeah, it's to your point, external center of focus, right? And the beautiful thing is, though, is everybody has that same one. So you've just got to be the one navigating it more effectively, right? And then a final one, what's something most people don't know about you?
Well, I already shared that I worked undercover narcotics for 2 years.
Right, that's kind of a giveaway. Yeah, it's a...
Yeah, that's kind of one of the things people don't know about me.
That's a pretty cool one, yeah.
I like, I might get on stage and talk to people and create videos on social media and stuff like that. But the other reality is I like to be alone.
Yeah.
Extroverts are actually introverts, in my opinion. And I'll go stand at the side of a lake with my fly rod in my hand, trying to catch a fish, and completely enjoy the fact that I can't touch my phone because both of my hands are taken up casting and trying to pull in a fish. I love technology. I love being around people, but I like being alone with none of it also.
Yeah. A big, massive belief I have on our society is that people don't take time to critically think as much as they should or used to. So I will second that for you on that being alone. Outside of that, thank you, Adam. I also, right at the end, like a late night show host, love to give you a minute to, sell what you want to sell, tell people where to find you online. Obviously, everybody should go get Start With a Win. I took the cover off. I'm sorry. I always read them without the cover, but you can see it here. Amazon sells them. I think you've probably got it on your personal site as well, but where can the people find you?
Yeah, so I'm at adamcontos.com, but also I've just started a franchise communication group called yourfranchisegroup.com, where we can go on there. If you're a Z, you go in the Z section. If you're a Zor, you go in the Zor section, and you can talk to your peers and really have a mastermind, because the only time we generally get to talk to each other in this space is at an event. When do we need to talk to each other? When we're not at an event and something's going sideways. So go to yourfranchisegroup.com and sign up. It's less than $1 a day. You're going to love it, and you'll get something out of it.
That's awesome. Well, Adam, I want to just say thank you so much. I mean, this was a fantastic conversation. I love the way you think about things. I love the way you think about leadership. I've definitely learned a few things. Like I said, your book was really fantastic. Not even a plug right there, just an actual very useful book to read. And so thank you so much for being on today.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be on your show.
Absolutely. And everybody else, thank you for listening to another episode of Behind the Franchise, and we hope you stay tuned for the next one. We'll talk to you soon.